Welcome to Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have another exciting guest on the podcast like we always do. This is an individual who graciously came to us and spoke another time, and he's going to speak to us again about a different topic. His name is Brad Touchette, and he's with the Missouri Libertarian Party. And he's going to talk to us today about starting a chapter of your alternative party. In his case, it's a Libertarian. Brad, it can apply to any type of alternative party, probably. So welcome to the podcast, Brad.
Thank you for having me once again. Glad to be back.
We're glad to be back. We're glad that you're back here. Now, we did have you introduce yourselves to our listeners the first time. If you want to briefly give an overview to yourself in case somebody's new this time, we'd appreciate that.
Sure. My name is Brad Touchette. I'm the chairman of the St. Charles County Libertarian Party, which is a chapter of the Missouri Libertarian Party, which is a chapter of the National Libertarian Party. And for anybody who wants to know, St. Charles is just outside of St. Louis. It's essentially a St. Louis suburb. We work closely with the St. Louis County and St. Louis City Libertarian parties, as well as a couple other counties that are adjacent to St. Charles County. And it's kind of what is going to drive the conversation in today's podcast.
Perfect. We'd love to hear about that. So this is a great podcast for people who are ambitious and want to do something more. They want to learn how to expand their party and take initiative. So when you got involved with the Libertarian Party and you wanted to, how did the St. Charles branch start? Can you please describe that to our audience so they have some background on how these things go about?
Well, I know that the guy who founded it, it wasn't me.
Okay.
I got involved with the St. Charles County Libertarian Party. And this is one of the things I strongly recommend is, as far as social media goes, the one thing that I've had the most success with is with the Meetup app. You can do a search using the Meetup app. It's not just for social events. I mean, technically, this is a social event. When you're putting together a chapter, a party, especially for a third party, it needs to be more of a social event, not nearly as formal because you're trying to attract people. And the one thing that you've got to keep in mind is if you get anybody's attention who's, shares your political views, odds are they're going to want to come. The reason they're coming to this meeting is they don't have any friends or family, or not very many friends or family who share their views. So you want to make sure that you are not only encouraging them to show up, but once they show up, have them speak. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but what we first did was when I first met the guy who had founded this, he had been working closely with St. Louis County Libertarian Party, and they had been around for about 20 years at that point. They helped him set up a meetup event through their meetup site, which we still use, so we kind of piggyback off of their meetup account. And we would just basically put notices out on Meetup, with keywords like Libertarian, St. Charles County, freedom, blah, 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 all the things that would attract the people of my political ilk. And so then the next thing he did initially was he would set up meetings in various restaurants around St. Charles.
Okay.
We found out later that turned out to be a little impractical. But I'll circle back on that. What we have done since, basically to finish up the story, as we were growing, I can give his first name, Jared and I were working closely, and we were growing the party, getting interest, and once we started getting enough people showing up on a regular basis, we decided we needed to establish formal officers and operating agreements, just like any other LLC or any other small business. And once we decided to hold that meeting together, it was funny because we were electing officers, and I was going to nominate Jared as chairman. And before I could say a word, he nominated me, and I looked at him, and I was like, well, what are you doing? I'm going to nominate you. He said, I don't want to be chair. He said, I'm a huge libertarian, but I want to be behind the scenes. I don't want to be the figurehead. He said, I think you'd be perfect. And I was humbled. And so, I've been in this position for like four and a half years now since.
Wow.
And and we've had different officers come and go, but and as we've grown, I've learned a few things. I guess to go back to the point that I deviated off of, we were originally hopping around from different restaurants and different bars. We finally found that by settling in on one location, we've got a good working relationship with the bar and restaurant that we attend every month. Our next meeting is this Thursday, as a matter of fact. And the bar is BMO's in Cobbleville, and obviously they're fantastic. They welcome us. They give us this little corner table. It's kind of out of the way of the main walk path of the restaurant. And we get there every month, and we kind of have a standing reservation for 12 to 14 people, plus we have additional chairs and tables that occasionally we get more people coming in, which we can discuss a little bit more later. Get people to pop in who want to just talk and see what we're all about. But we've got our standing regular group, and we meet at the same place every time. And the waitresses know us, the bartenders know us, the owners know us, and we've got a great working relationship with them. So when things do need to change, when you've got to be flexible, when hey, I need more because I've got an event coming, we've had to do that a few times. Then they're more than willing to accommodate us. And you also start to get established around town, as this is where the Libertarians meet. So it helps as far as geographic location when you're trying to get yourself some visibility within the community.
Yes, that's a good point you make. I run a nonprofit chapter of an organization, and one of the biggest struggles we have is finding places to meet. So I imagine other people are going to struggle with that as well. So we've met at the libraries. Some libraries do have limits sometimes how often you can meet. So you recommend restaurants as a place.
Well, one thing you got to factor in, I mean, I don't know what your target audience is. If you're talking college students, it may not be have a lot of money. So meeting with them in a restaurant may be cost prohibitive. I mean, we go to a restaurant. It's a nice restaurant, but it's reasonably priced. And a lot of people have suggested public meeting areas such as libraries, and the Lincoln County, who's north of us, they used to meet at the fire department district, and then somebody from another. But see, I was about to say somebody from one of the other political groups, I don't remember which one, pulled rank and said that you can't be using that public building for public use. So if you're going to be using public buildings, you may run into problems, especially if a Democrat or Republican wants to give you trouble. It's kind of libraries are kind of safe areas, but those meeting rooms I find are you've got to book them out. They're not readily available, so it may run into a few problems like that. There's just other difficulties. Okay. It just depends. I mean, if you don't have the money to get together once a month and buy a meal for yourself, I mean, I certainly would not suggest anything like, once you start promoting yourself, which we can go into promotions in a little bit here, but I would not recommend, springing for wings or free appetizers or buying anything. This is, don't. Because you'll go broke doing that, and people will show up simply for the free food, whether they care about your cause or not, or your group or not.
Yep. You got a good point. You got a good point about the political stuff, because the nonprofit chapter that I founded is political, but it's a 501c3, and those are considered nonpartisan, and a political party by its nature is considered partisan. So there's going to be more limits on where a political party can meet than a regular nonprofit. So that's a good point you make.
Yeah,
so for the person, for somebody that's wanting to start this, what would be the first step you would advise to start a chapter? What would be the first thing they need to do?
Well, you need to start attending events that cater towards people who share your interests. Events like, if you're really starting from nothing, you can even stand outside entrances to things like Mardi Gras events or St. Patrick's Day. things, and stand out there with a clipboard and say, hey, X political party, we're trying to start a group here in this county, with a clipboard, and just say, what I like to do is say, if you want to give me your name and any information you're comfortable with sharing, you don't expect anything, but some way to contact you that you're comfortable with sharing, and then assure those people that you're not gathering this information to sell it. This is simply because we're trying to gauge interest in the party and interest in the area to see if there's enough to start a chapter.
Sure.
Now, we as third parties have a disadvantage because, I know the state of Missouri has a starter kit you can apply to the state and Libertarian Party, and they will give you funds to get you started. But you need to be a little organized too. You can't just be, hi, I'm Joe, and I want to start the chapter, blah, 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 in some county downstate Missouri. You need to have some sort of establishment before they're going to give you some money. And I'm assuming that most other, at least nationwide political parties, I'm trying to think there's too many others outside of the Libertarian. There may be a handful, but it really is a matter of getting a few names together, finding a location you want to meet, and then obviously you're not going to be starting your own party that, I guess you could do that, but you're not going to gain much traction if it's Joe's political party. The best other thing to do is, once you're getting yourself established, is reach out to that party, be it Libertarian, Constitution, Green Party, whoever. Reach out to the national office and, ask them for resources. The one thing the National Party gave us was bumper stickers, which turned out to be really popular. And it doesn't say anything other than the word Libertarian on them with a symbol.
Wow.
And it's at the point where, we almost wanted to start giving away as presents, as prizes, as opposed to just take them free, because they were going, everybody was grabbing one. And it's like, wow, these are ridiculously popular.
Okay.
So, you can do that, but, the one thing I wanted to make sure we've conveyed in this podcast is, once you start, you've got a few names together, that don't start buying food for everybody. The appeal is what you're offering in the meeting. And I would also encourage you, when you're speaking to people, and say, hey, we're going to have this meeting, and you'll get people say, oh, I'm a Republican, or oh, I'm a Democrat. I'm not interested. And that's when you turn and say, listen, if you're into politics, you're obviously into politics because you're talking to me as opposed to ignoring me. We welcome all voices. Oh, wow. And, you want to have that discussion. And if you're going to be the eventual chairman or whatever, or if you're just organizing the party, remember that you're the moderator, which means that the person who throws the party never gets to be the life of the party in a social. You know what I'm saying? You've got to keep that in mind. And I know that anybody who's listening to this is like, well, I'd love to run my own meeting in my own party. Well, if you're going to do that, if you're going to run your own meeting and start your own group, whether it be a student group or, a county group, you got to remember, if you're running it, you've got to play referee. And if you've ever watched anybody who runs a podcast, especially when there's 4 or 5 people or a discussion panel, you'll see the host, the moderator, like you, if I was one of 5 people and we were sitting in a room, what you do is you sit there and you let one person talk, and then you just point to somebody else. And you don't let one person dominate the conversation. If you have to step in and step on and say, okay, somebody else wants to say something, you really have to play referee. But what you want to do is you want to get the person engaged. The reason they're talking to you, the reason they love politics, the reason they want to get involved is they want to make a difference. You've got to make sure that they feel heard. And even if they're telling you something that you already know, let them tell it. Let them tell it anyway, and support it with something else. But don't interrupt. Let everybody have their chance to speak so that they're feeling like they're contributing, and they'll come back. If you get somebody who walks in and they just sit at the side, and you and 2 of your buddies are dominating the entire conversation the entire time and not involving them, they're not coming back. They might even leave early.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good idea.
My friend Jared, who founded this or put together this thing that I've taken and run it with, he always, when new people came in, would phrase it and say, well, tell me your libertarian origin story. Wow. And essentially, what he's at, was his creative way of saying, what has drawn you to this party? What are your political interests? What are your causes? Why are you, what turned you into a Libertarian or a Green Party or a third party person? Because obviously, if you just want to get involved in politics and you want to be more than likely guaranteed to get a few wins every election cycle, you've got two parties to choose from.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the reason I became a Libertarian is because neither of those parties really matched my values. If you're just in it to win,
sure.
You've got those two other options. If you're in it to really make a difference, you'll realize that those two parties are really serving themselves, and that's why you're interested in third parties, and that's why people like your listeners are listening to this program.
Exactly. So you talked about your national chapter, your national headquarters. They gave you resources to start a chapter. So what about on the end of filing with the government? What type of paperwork do you need to file for this?
Well, in the state of Missouri, we got to file an EIN, and as far as EIN, that's with the IRS. There's another thing with the state of Missouri, and boy, I wish I'd had my treasurer on the phone with me right now to answer those questions. We have to do a tax filing, but when you're third party like we are, especially if you're not, if you're just starting, I didn't want to get in the granulars of that because that's a more advanced question for once you're established and you're supporting candidates. If you're not turning a profit, if you're not really collecting anything to where I think from the state of Missouri, it's if you made more than $500, you don't even have to report that to the IRS. But we have an EIN number. You check with your state and county to see what requirements there are. The other thing is that since this is nationwide, I don't want to give incorrect advice to a different state. The best thing to do would be to contact your election board, your local election official, and once you're at the point where you're setting up a bank account, you need to go through the bank and tell them what you're trying to set up. And most banks, I recommend credit unions as opposed to banks, because banks will try to find a way to charge you fees. And so will some credit unions. So you've got to be smart about where you bank, because you're not going to be doing large volumes of money, at least not to start. So you want to make sure you keep your expenses low. And what you need to file, you certainly want to get an EIN number or a TIN number, depending on how you want to call it, through the IRS, because you'll need that to do anything else. You'll need to set up an articles of incorporation, which names successors and how things are decided. There are plenty of examples of that online. You can even borrow it from the way the Democrats or the Republican parties have their hierarchy laid out on their websites. You just need to copy the model. And honestly, if you're joining a party like the Green or the Libertarians, they've already got stuff established. You just need to ask them for the template to fill it out. Okay.
So what type of time commitment would this require? Does it vary depending on, is it as much as or little as you want to, or how would you describe the time commitment for people that are into this?
Well, once you're getting started, if you're getting started, it really is a matter of, it's up to you. I mean, we, as Libertarians, it was easier because we were already somewhat established and more recognizable party. I've told the story in the last podcast how I get people coming up to us all the time. Libertarians, just trying to get most of them who are cheering for us to actually vote for us. Awesome. Because everybody's a little scared to vote third party. There's always a fear of you're throwing your vote away. So it probably isn't as challenging. If you're a Libertarian listening to this, you've got a head start on other third parties, because the majority of the other ones, be it the No Name, the Constitutional, the Green, they are very new and are not very well organized yet. That's not a criticism. That's just simply a statement of fact due to time. So you may be a little more on your own there. But what you do is, make sure you're finding people or you're telling people what you're standing for, and just start hosting meetings and get a Twitter account with a handle that's common and try to get that Twitter or X account's handle to match what you have on your Facebook, so you can start having a brand, essentially. Our brand right now is just simply, at LPSTCHMO, which is just a bunch of abbreviations, Libertarian Party, St. Charles, Missouri. But we put that on everything. Everything we sell, from our T-shirts, we hand out stickers at events like we've got Mardi Gras coming up in St. Charles County's Mardi Gras, and then we've got Defiance, Missouri has their St. Patrick's Day. And, obviously we're still doing this, even though nobody's getting elected. They aren't having another election for another year and a half, 2 years. We're still making our presence known, and we're still promoting ourselves and letting the communities know what how we can benefit them. And that goes for any political group. That's just smart politicking. You got to make sure you can't just organize and create a party 6 months before an election and expect to get any traction with anybody. So even though people say, oh, there's not an election for another 2 years, I know, but we want you guys to know we're still active, we're still here, and we are an influence. A friend of mine also recently compared us to the abolitionists that eventually freed the slaves. The abolitionists were a political party, but they weren't powerful enough to get everything their way. But they were powerful and organized enough to influence the Republican Party to take on their cause. And and because there were enough votes for what they believed in, they influenced the Republicans who gained their votes. And quite honestly, that'd probably be another podcast, but something very similar happened at the Libertarian convention this past year, where Trump ended up winning. This is the first time the Libertarians were ever addressed by a potential presidential candidate outside of our own party ever. So we were obviously we have become enough of a political influence to where it was worth candidate Trump's time to come out and address us. And I think that honestly, candidly, I know this is a podcast, but candidly, I think that really hurt Chase Oliver's candidacy, our presidential candidate, because I think a whole lot of libertarians, especially once Trump pulled Vivek in as, not necessarily a running mate, but as a supporter, a whole lot of libertarians voted for Trump this time around.
Huh. Okay, that's interesting, because some of the things he says and supports are definitely not libertarian.
Some of them are not, but some of them are. I think the one thing that is very much music to every libertarian's ears is shrink the government, take out all these regulations, get rid of all these government bodies, get your tax money back to you. The things about tariffs are highly debated, even in our meetings, as to whether or not they're beneficial. And, I won't get into that here, because I have my opinions and everybody has theirs. But the one thing will do with Thursday night, because the other thing that we did, and I will make sure I bring this up as well, make sure when you have your meetings, at the first half of the meeting, once you're organized, you get through your business, you give the chair a chance to speak, vice chair a chance to speak, same for the secretary, treasurer, any other committeemen, and you go over new business, and then you review old business, and you try to wrap that up within the first hour, and then you make sure the second hour is for socializing, and this is where you're telling people who are like, well, I'm not this party, I'm with this party. You say, we welcome everybody. This is a political debate, and I play ref, so nobody gets hostile and heated, but we want all political stripes to have this discussion, because you may end up converting somebody who says, oh, I'm this person. But if you're having an engaging party and you've got compelling reasons, obviously if somebody's showing up to your meeting, they're open-minded enough to hear other sides and have a discussion. So you want to encourage that discussion strongly, and you want to make sure that you're dedicating at least the second half of your meeting to that discussion. our meetings go 2.5 hours easily.
Wow.
Our first 45 minutes is knocking out business, and we sit around, and I get people from every political stripe who come in to join us just because they want to sit and talk politics that night. And, we'll all be eating our own dinners that we each paid for ourselves. Just make sure the listeners hear that. And,
yes.
We paid for our own meals, nobody else's. And then, and we had great discussion. Now we've got people, we still get some people pop in and out. They're never going to convert to libertarianism, but they're welcome to come and join us. And it, at least for the Libertarian Party, we welcome dissent. And it helps sharpen our point of view as well. And sometimes I said in the last podcast, I'm okay with being proven wrong because it gives me a chance to see something in a light that I hadn't seen before.
Oh, good. That's a good way to be. So I remember you telling me that you need to get off the call before a certain time, and we're about reaching that time, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. Now, as
I can
for
do about 5 more minutes if that's okay. I mean, we can go
5 more minutes. Okay. All right, great.
Sure.
We can do that. So one thing I was wondering about the restaurants is, what about people who aren't able to pay for a meal? Are the restaurants okay with maybe 1 or 2 people coming in that aren't paying, as long as the other people are paying?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've had people join all the time who were simply buying, all they did was buy a soda or drink water. I mean, the restaurant, so long as you've got a consistent group of people who are, if you got 4 or 5 people and 4 or 5 people are buying a meal every month, it's 1 meal a month, and you've got 2 or 3 other people who are just popping in, and all they want is water, or maybe they'll buy a drink, a beer, or something like that, then, so long as the majority of the people, you're not tying up a table and you're not all drinking coffee, they'll be okay. They will welcome the business. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That's one of the things, too, when I was in college, we were all broke, and we'd go to Denny's and just sit there and drink coffee and tea all night while studying at a corner table, but we bucked up enough to tip the waitress for tying up her table, so that, even though the store, Denny's is a heavy chain, so I'm sure the manager wasn't thrilled we were tying up a table, but we weren't going to wait. We've got to make sure you're taking care of the waitress as well, waiter or waitress who's taking care of you. That's very important, because you take care of their employees, they'll welcome you back, so you come back all the time.
Oh, sure.
So that's the important thing of that, yeah. And don't take advantage of their kindness. So that you have a table and you can develop a rapport where, every month when I'm walking out the door, like Thursday when I get done, I'll be walking out the door and I'll set the reservation for the first Thursday of the following month on my way out the door. And it's, it's not necessarily a standing agreement, but we normally get the table we want, which is in back. And they seem to at least anticipate it every month because we're regular customers. And we're not buying anything more than, we're not buying the expensive stuff, and we're not buying food to take home. It's just you walk into a restaurant and that was your meal for the night and sort of your entertainment for the night. It's no different than going out on a date or going out on a Friday night to do whatever. That's your expense. And
sure. Other than that, what other costs are involved in this that you have to pay up front, or is that something that you use, most things you pay through the dues?
Well, actually, we are just starting to collect dues this month. For the most part, everything we've been doing was strictly voluntary. Like the stuff that when we would do these tents and when we do these outreach programs, the people that are attending, especially the regular members, we'll say, okay, guys, let's, we're going to need to buck up to pay for this tent. It's $85. If everybody can throw in $5, we'll have it covered. And the stuff that I do as a chairman, I buy stuff like, I found stickers, different sticker companies that are dirt cheap, and I pay for that myself. I get, like 1,000 stickers for $25. Little things like that. And then I'll, give them to my fellow libertarians. And when we're standing out at the meetings, we just, when we're standing out at those outreach things, hand out stickers to the kids, because that gets the parents talking. And then If the
Oh,
parents
good,
are
yeah.
smiling, you can offer it to the parents as well. Hey, do you want a sticker too? And I found that there's a little kid in every grown-up. They all sit there and smile if you're being kind. And, hey, do you want a sticker too, like your kid? I'll go, yeah, okay. And then, then more often than not, they won't throw them away. They'll stick it somewhere, and then you've got name recognition. You've got your little. Our sticker is just the porcupine with the LPSTCHMO in it, and they'll stick it somewhere, and it'll just be something that every time they look at it, they'll think of you, and that is priceless advertising.
Yes, yeah. It sounds like it's a good return on investment from what you paid for it.
Oh yeah. It's dirt cheap. It's fun. Gets the kids involved rather than just standing behind the table and yelling at people. You need to vote for us. Blah blah blah. Get you more interactive. Get you out from behind the table, talking, shaking hands. Just even walking up to a kid squatting down. Squat down when you're approaching children, by the way, and never put a sticker on a child. By the way, offer it to them. Do not touch the child ever. Just fair warning. Yeah. Some people get a little forgetful about that. These are other people's little children. So you can offer them the sticker, but don't ever put the sticker on them or anything. Anything you're giving with the kids, you offer it to them and let them take it from you. Don't put it on them yourself. That causes all kinds of problems.
Good idea. That's something people may not think about on top of their head, but that's something very important.
Yes.
So, Brad, before you go, do you have any last bits of wisdom or advice?
Nothing I can think of. I know I kind of, again, rambled a bit here. If anybody has any questions from what they hear and, from what they've heard, I want some more information on this, they can email me directly at our handle, which is, it's LPSTCHMO, Libertarian Party, St. Charles, Missouri, at gmail.com. Our website is still being worked on, so we're not that far along to be where we can accept anything else as far as outreach. And you can also direct message me at LPSTCHMO through Twitter and Facebook. So we're in those three major things. If anybody wants to reach out and ask any more questions, I'm more than willing to help. I'm not going to just cater specifically to libertarians. I'd help anybody because I believe in free speech, and even if you're saying something that I don't agree with, I want to encourage your ability to say it.
Great. That's a great attitude. We appreciate that.
That's what you're supposed to do. We live in a free society, and that means that people are going to say things sometimes that you're not going to like. That doesn't mean it gives you the right to silence them. That's the big thing that we just got done with over the past 4 or 5 years. And make sure I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that mindset, that thinking never comes back. At least I'll do everything I can.
Oh, sure. Yep. All right, Brad, we appreciate you coming on the podcast today and sharing your experience and wisdom with our audience.
Okay, great. I appreciate your time again. And again, reach out if you have any more questions. And if you ever want to talk about anything else, give me a call.
Perfect. Have a great day and all the best with your political activities.
Thank you. You too, sir.
Bye.
Bye-bye.